One of the biggest events in Europe in the biotech sector is without a doubt Bio-Europe, and this year's event was held in the beautiful German city of Leipzig. As well as lots of colour-coded booths for one-on-one meetings, there were also plenty of exhibitors, so Labiotech had an opportunity to find out about the biotech scenes in Portugal, Greece and Mauritius, as well as to talk to more than a dozen companies about their work.
Yeah, so the background of the company is actually interesting in a way that we started in 2018. A group of seasoned people who just came together, looked at a new mechanism or kind of a new understanding of a certain mechanism and saw a certain potential. So we kind of threw our minds together, raised money and targeted a problem. And the problem is that in our days, treatments for metabolic disease like obesity and diabetes, as two examples, fall short to address the underlying disease process. And since we kind of understood the mechanism, which is much more complex than had been thought for a long time, we thought we should get there. And what the key of the mechanism, the key of the mechanistic understanding is that in our small intestine, so in the first part of the GI tract, there's a part that absorbs food and there's a part that senses food. And the construction is made in a way that if you eat too much and you don't absorb all food, it actually reaches to the second part and triggers a hormonal response that shuts down satiety, hunger, increased satiety, and food intake is reduced, energy expenditure goes up. So the whole digestive process is kicked on. And one of the first hormones that was discovered there are incretins like GLP-1, and that has been exploited since over 20 years as a drug. So we looked at this and thought, well, if these cells make so much more than just GLP-1, why don't we get it all? That was the simple idea. So we actually learned how to trigger this hormonal response. So we developed a targeted release compound. So we have developed a formulation that can release natural substances at very discrete parts of this nutrient sensing part of the GI tract. So we can trigger this hormonal response. And what we can have now shown in phase 1 human study is that we not just release GLP-1 or whatever, we release them all. So I frequently compare this. If you see all the hormones being released by those cells as a spectrum of a rainbow, we take the rainbow while others just take one color. So that was the idea, which kind of fascinated us, and it was really pure fascination at first. And we said, okay, well, let's do it. And so far, everything went extremely well, exceedingly well. We can prove that we release all those hormones, and we're now in 2 phase 2 studies for the indications of obesity and pre-diabetes, and we think that we can change the treatment landscape for millions of people.
And how does it actually work in the body?
It makes the body work. So that's the fascinating part. So we use natural substances, food components, and as you can look it up everywhere, it's glucose. And so our claim to fame is that we know how to bring it exactly to where it needs to be without causing any side effects. And then the glucose triggers these cells, and they release all those hormones at the right time, in the right relationship to each other, and everything it has been created by Mother Nature. That's exactly what we exploit. So we just simulate a healthy GI system where an unhealthy GI system is found in patients, right? That because that derailment of the endocrine system, of the hormonal response, is a hallmark of metabolic disease like obesity, and we correct this.
And it's not a one-time treatment? Is it something that you have to keep taking?
The phase 2 studies that we've just started, they prescribe 1 intake per day. Of course, we're just starting, so we will actually modify this into two doses per day, all these permutations that you now can make. But since we know that this 1 dose is so effective, because that's what we've shown in the phase 1 study, we trust that it will actually induce weight loss and correct pathologic glucose tolerance. So this is why we do these 2 trials. But when you now think about what I just said, that we release all those hormones, we can actually literally go back to the textbooks of physiology and find the function for all those hormones. And this will actually then enlighten you with regard to which indications you should go next. It should go for next. And this is I'm saying this because to illustrate, we're just starting to exploit this potential. And what we're proud of is that this is a very new way to practice medicine and to do medicine. Again, natural substances, and to make the system luck in a way that this happens at the right place at the right time.
It clearly has implications for things beyond obesity and diabetes.
Most definitely. So if you look, we chose obesity because obesity is kind of almost an umbrella term. Obesity is not just a large mass of body fat. It's actually this amassment of fat cells. Those cells are active. They actually produce inflammatory media. So you have an inflamed body that produces insulin resistance, and insulin resistance happens everywhere. So obesity is a multi-organ disease. It's a systemic multi-organ disease. And so therefore, patients with obesity have metabolic syndrome, have type 2 diabetes, have fatty liver disease or fatty liver hepatitis. They have neurological disorders. Parkinson is now integrated into this whole idea that a pathological insulin resistance is involved. So correction thereof could actually affect all those indications. But I have to humbly state that this is far in the future, but this is what I try to say. It's an outlook, and the outlook is a good one because we positively showed we release all these hormones at the right time, right dose, right kinetic, and so on, and we know what they do. So now we just go one after the other to document that they really do what they think they're supposed to do. That's kind of the development path of the company.
So where are you at on that journey, and how far have you still got to go?
We have now entered the phase 2 studies, clinical studies, in obese patients or patients with obesity, and the primary outcome is weight loss. But we're going to do lots of subgroup analysis to also kind of touch on other indications. The second phase 2 study that we will start in a few days, actually, is in patients with prediabetes. And as you know, prediabetes is a huge population of not yet patients, because prediabetes is not an indication yet. But 40% of those patients will progress into diabetes within a year. And the older they get, the higher the risk to become diabetic. What we try to prove is that with our compound, we could delay this progression or even stop that progression, which would be kind of a very good news for the population health. That's what we try to prove with the second study. This is where we stand, and of course, from a development perspective, we have to mention the huge potential, because we don't want to be limited to just that.
And obviously, huge potential for insurance companies in North America as well, not having to pay out for all of these. Once somebody has diabetes, the costs just skyrocket.
Exactly. This is why when you look at the treatment landscape and at the regulatory landscape, there's more and more push to prevent rather than cure. So this is, but it's difficult to prevent. It's difficult to prevent with medications that have large side effects, because if you give a patient a medication with large side effects, at a point where he or she doesn't feel to have a problem, then you get the comment, if that's your solution, I want to have my problem back. So this is why this is not really working, and actually also not allowed from a regulatory point of view. This is where we actually begin with our idea, because we don't have side effects in our not different from placebo. That's the correct regulatory term, because in our phase 1 study we didn't see any side effects that were different from the placebo group in 20 patients. So we will monitor this in our trials now. But we have a treatment here that is a natural substance, presumably without any side effects, that can be given to kids and for the whole lifetime if you want to, because we do not expect side effects that would limit applicability and treatment duration. So this is the hope. If we can prove that, then, and you're absolutely right, then it would be a big change.